The Miami Dolphins made a move that was as calculated as it was inevitable. They brought back Quentin Bell on a one-year, $1.5 million contract, but not before letting him twist in the wind for a moment. This wasn't a decision made out of sentimentality. It wasn't about rewarding a player for his hard work or showing loyalty. It was a financial move, pure and simple, and it tells you everything you need to know about how the Dolphins are handling their offseason. They had a choice: tender Bell as a restricted free agent for $3.2 million, or let him test free agency and potentially bring him back at a lower cost. They chose the second option, and in doing so, they saved $1.7 million. That's money that can now be used elsewhere, on a roster that still has holes to fill and improvements to make. Bell isn't a superstar. He's not the kind of player who makes headlines on a daily basis. But he's exactly the type of player that teams like the Dolphins need. Someone who grinds, someone who fights for a roster spot, someone who can be counted on when the moment calls for it. Last season, after spending time on the practice squad, he clawed his way onto the 53-man roster. He played in all 17 games. He started 3 of them. He finished with 27 tackles. He recorded his first career sack. And it wasn't just any sack. It was Matthew Stafford, a Super Bowl-winning quarterback, on Monday Night Football, in a game the Dolphins won against the Rams. Moments like that don't go unnoticed, but they also don't guarantee anything in a league where roster spots are as fluid as ever. The writing was on the wall for Bell. Even though new defensive coordinator Anthony Weaver spoke highly of him, the Dolphins were in no rush to overpay. This team has depth at edge rusher. They have options. They have players they believe in. So, while they valued Bell's contributions, they weren't about to commit over $3 million to keep him around when they didn't have to. That's how smart teams operate. They assess, they calculate, they make the move that makes the most sense for the long term. And Bell, for all his effort, was always going to be a player they would try to keep on their terms. This wasn't just about Bell. His situation was just one piece of a much bigger puzzle. The Dolphins had multiple outside linebackers hitting free agency. Emmanuel Ogbah, once a major piece of the defense, was set to hit the market. Tyus Bowser was in the same boat. If Bell had walked, that would have left the Dolphins thin at the position, something they clearly weren't willing to risk. But instead of panicking, instead of throwing money at the problem, they stayed patient. They let the process play out. They tendered Cameron Goode as an exclusive rights free agent, ensuring they'd have some stability at the position. Then, they circled back to Bell at a number they were comfortable with. This is how smart teams build rosters, not by reacting emotionally, but by thinking strategically. The Dolphins' offseason is far from over. Moves have been made, but there's still plenty of work left to do. They've brought in quarterback Zach Wilson from Denver, a player whose career has been a roller coaster, but who still has untapped potential. They've signed James Daniels from Pittsburgh, a guard who adds much-needed strength to the offensive line. They've picked up Larry Borom from Chicago, another move aimed at fortifying the trenches. They've added Ifeatu Melifonwu from Detroit, giving them another option in the secondary. They've also made a few re-signings beyond Bell. Defensive tackle Matt Dickerson is staying put. Safety Elijah Campbell, a key special teams player, is back as well. But there have been losses too. Braxton Berrios is gone, off to Houston. He was a solid contributor, but the Dolphins clearly believe they can replace him. Robert Jones, an important depth piece on the offensive line, is heading to Dallas. That one might hurt a little more. And then there's Jevon Holland. Losing him to the Giants stings. He was a playmaker, a difference maker, a guy who had a knack for showing up in big moments. His absence will be felt, and now the Dolphins have to figure out how to fill that gap. This team is in a critical phase. They're coming off a season where they showed flashes of being a legitimate contender, but they weren't quite there yet. They have a quarterback in Tua Tagovailoa who has proven he can win games, but there are still questions about whether he's the guy who can take them all the way. They have a head coach in Mike McDaniel whose offensive schemes have revolutionized the way they play, but who still needs to prove he can adjust when defenses catch up. They have stars in Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, but they need to make sure they have the supporting cast to make everything click. Every move the Dolphins make from this point forward is about one thing: closing the gap. They're not rebuilding. They're not starting over. They're right there on the edge, and they need to make the right choices to take the next step. Re-signing Quentin Bell. It's not the kind of move that will dominate headlines. It won't sell jerseys. But it's the kind of move that shows this team understands how to build a roster the right way. They kept a player they valued, at the price they wanted. They didn't overspend. They didn't overcommit. They played it smart. The offseason isn't over. More moves are coming. More decisions will be made. Who's next? Who's out? Who's in? The Dolphins aren't done. And neither is the story of this team.